Welcome to episode 44 of the Breaking Balls podcast, the post-Daytona weekend recap. And Friday night ended because of the rain, Saturday night ended a three-way at the line, and Sunday ended all under yellow, just like Coldplay intended.
Well, Bob, we had a great full weekend of racing. Week one, somehow, someway, Ricky Stenhouse won the Daytona 500. We're here to talk about that and a lot more, Bob. Here goes nothing.
Daryl, how long?
Wait. This is the Daytona 500, isn't it?
You bet.
Don't tell me it isn't.
All right, everybody. This is episode 44 of the Breaking Balls podcast, where we're going to break it down over here, the Daytona 500. Long weekend over at the capital of motorsports down in Florida. Got a lot to break down. Of course, we're going to go over the Ricky Stenhouse win, a couple of big wrecks, some strategy, and then maybe a couple of commercials Fox is going to throw in between here. I don't know, but a lot to break down here.
Yep, no side-by-sides for the podcast, Bob, but we are going to break down a lot of different things we noticed in this race. Coming to you live probably about 45 minutes after the race here, just getting going. Bob, I just knee-jerk reaction to this race. Whew, it just feels like I can exhale a little bit finally. It was a long one, action-packed. A lot of interesting things went down, but none more interesting than the fact that somehow, some way, they waved that yellow flag and Ricky Stenhouse was in front of the field, and he is the winner of the Great American Race this year, Bob. He's the first man to qualify for the chase for the Cup. I mean, wow.
Listen, Ad. He won the Daytona 500. You got to put some respect on the man's name. It is not Ricky Stenhouse, this podcast. It is Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Daytona 500 champion. I can't believe I'm saying that. It's 7:16 Central Time on Sunday night, the Lord's Day Sunday, February, right before President's Day. And Ricky Stenhouse has won the Daytona 500. What the hell?
Bob, it's one of those things that, as I watched the race, did I think it was possible? No, absolutely not. It just didn't feel like he was there or around really the entire race. But if you'd have told me before this race started that Ricky Stenhouse was going to win, all right. I mean, I would have bought it a little bit. I would have asked what happened. But at the end of the day, it wouldn't have been that surprising because he has been a guy who has had success at super speedways in the past. And today was the day for him. All the stars aligned. Things went correctly. And Eric Almirola gets into Travis Pastrana, almost kills Kyle Larson. Fox doesn't tell us anything. And all of a sudden, here we are. I mean, Joey Logano and his newfound thick hair after the race, just throwing his hands up, not necessarily knowing what to do with it, Bob. But I think I'm there with Joey because I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how this happened.
It was a strange ending for sure there. Obviously, we go to overtime. We'll get down to how we got to overtime here shortly. But my immediate thoughts here, obviously, it's great to see Ricky Stenhouse and that JTD Doherty team win. Always, when you see that smaller side of the garage get some success, it's always great. My immediate thoughts, though, are, oh boy, here we go again. Last year you had, I believe, 19 winners on the calendar, 17 in the regular season. This was not one of those 17 last year. This was a team that did not win last year. So, oh boy, here we go again. A playoff spot is in theory already taken up. It's locked up. I saw a couple tweets already within 20 minutes of the race over saying, "Oh well, there's one of your first four out for the playoffs." There, I don't know. It's don't want to speculate there, but the lottery of Daytona just continues. It really does.
No, he showed up. I mean, you spin the wheel and. It really is like playing roulette in Vegas. There's all sorts of things that need to go right. I think Denny Hamlin pre-race had a pretty good equation. I can't remember all the numbers, and I'm not going to do him the injustice of trying to make them up off the top of my head because I can't do math. But it just goes to show you that sometimes when you're super speedway racing, it's better to be lucky than good. And I think this is a case of that for Ricky Stenhouse a little bit. But, I mean, certainly wasn't the race that I thought we were going to have. I guess we can now get into the wreck that kind of ended the race there, Bob. I touched on it a little bit, but mostly it was just, it was definitely a racing thing. I think, everybody's kind of jockeying for position. I kind of smelled this one coming. I texted you before the restart, and as soon as I saw Travis Pastrana was kind of starting in the mix there towards the front, I thought we had the potential to have an issue. And I mean, sure enough, we get up on the turn. Almirola gets into him, who then in turn just taps Larson, and Larson takes a really nasty hit. I mean, just a right turn hard into the wall. Luckily, checked Twitter after the race. Seems like he's okay. Kind of got the all clear on the radio, but very scary scene there, Bob, to end the race under caution. But I guess once I figured out Kyle Larson was okay, Bob, I started to think, because is it good for the sport to have a wreck like this behind the leaders, behind the top five even, kind of come out and end the race when there was going to be a really competitive finish? At least we were looking like we were headed towards one. So wanted to get your opinions on the rule there. And is it something that needs to be changed? I'm sure this is going to be a topic of conversation this week, so may as well give you the chance to kick the ball off here.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the protocol right now. It's definitely, for a casual fan or somebody that's just tuning into the 500, it's definitely a little bit clunky. It's definitely a little bit more harder to explain. But listen, for safety reasons, I understand if they're racing back to the line there, and that wreck happens with Kyle Larson, them, I believe, coming into the backstretch. It's going in out of turn 2 there. Let's say that there's the leaders racing to the line, and there's another big wreck in turn 3 or turn 4. You got 2 giant wrecks in 2 different parts of the track. You're going to have to split up the safety team. Just for me, I understand why it's in place now the way it is today. These cars, they can just fly around. They can really be weapons. Back in the day, a lot of these cars were kind of spread out. It wasn't the pack racing that you see nowadays. So I think just with times, it's kind of better safe than sorry. I hate it too, Ad, because like you said, you want to see them race to the line there. Was Ricky Stenhouse going to be the first car to the line? Probably not. It probably would have been Joey Logano or Christopher Bell, but coulda, woulda. I mean, that's the rules that are in protocol there. Ricky Stenhouse wins. I do, like you said, with Kyle Larson, I'm glad to see he's okay. Brad Keselowski, both of them had really hard, basically head-on collisions into the wall there, like you said, and kind of, wanted to touch on that because Fox never mentioned it in the post-race broadcast. I know that the time slot, this race was the longest ever lap-wise, so, 8 into the TV window, they had to get out. But man, there was no confirmation those guys were okay. As a viewer there, if I don't have Twitter or social media, I don't know that they're okay when they go to the next program. And it's just something that I wish that they would just kind of do for the viewer's sake there, because that was, again, a very nasty hit. And with this car and the concussions and the injury history it's had, again, it's kind of more equipped to take on that head-on collision like that. But even then, as a viewer, I want to make sure everyone's okay. So just kind of wanted to mention that too. But
yeah, I just think, you kind of, if you watch the sport every week, especially like we do, you just kind of become attached to these people, not just as drivers, but, you meet their family. You kind of understand what they've got going on off the track. And Kyle Larson is definitely one of those guys for us, at least. So would make all the world of a difference just to kind of keep the human side of the sport in it. Make sure we let everybody know what's going on. I agree with you 100%. I think it's one of those things that if they have the information, it would be great of them to relay it. I mean, I understand why it's not necessarily on everybody's, on the forefront of the broadcast mind there, because there's a lot of stuff going on at Victory Lane, but that's a little detail that I agree with you, Bob. Just think it would make all the world of difference.
There was a lot we could cherry pick with Fox tonight. I'm sure we're going to at some point with a handful of a plethora of things that we'll say Mike Joy and the boys were pretty good tonight there. But
hold on. Before you start, Bob, we're just going to go to a side-by-side real quick. So we'll see you guys later. And we'll make sure that the first big wreck of the race is you can see it silently with nobody explaining what happened or how it happened for at least a couple more minutes, because the Whopper needs your audio, Bob. I'm telling you right now.
Man, can we at least cut in when it's live? We'll get to all that. But obviously the wreck is what, at the end there, it kind of took away from the great finish there. But cautions breed cautions. We got there because of NASCAR overtime, the green-white checkered. It was looking like for a minute there, it was going to be Brad Keselowski versus Kyle Busch. 2 guys that had, they're going to be first ballot Hall of Famers. Kyle Busch, this is his 18th running in the 500, still never won it. 2 guys that champions of the sport. Like I said, first ballot Hall of Famers. They've never won the 500. It's an elusive race. And they had both of their teammates behind them before the caution started. And I texted you. We both were saying, oh, man, this is great TV. This is just drama, drama, drama. Then the cautions come out, and that gets split up. But, it was great to see two of those guys have a moment there where this is going to be one of those photo book moments. But then the cautions happened. Daytona Carnage happened. And RFK versus RCR. Who would have thunk it?
Yeah, it's one of those things that just to see how far both of these teams have come in a year, because obviously, it wasn't just stage 3 there. For the better part of the end, I'd say at least half of stage 2 and stage 3, RFK was dominant in this race. The Fords in general, we can touch on that a little bit later, were pretty dominant as a manufacturer. But Bob, it's one of those things that you just have to respect.
RFK it's just like last year with RFK, where they were shitty at the Coliseum and now they're good at Daytona again this year.
Yeah, Brad finds a way to kind of figure things out on these super speedways, and Chris Buescher, man. Christopher Buescher. Nobody really looks at him as a big threat at super speedways, but he really was holding his own today, made some really strong moves to kind of keep that lead for him and Brad as they were driving. It looked like they were going to be able to hold on to things, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, let's face facts, Kyle Busch, in all likelihood, if he's not Kyle Busch, is completely out of this race. He starts in the back, he finds a way to get himself up to the front, green flag pit, speeding penalty to then get him sent to the back. He lucky dogs and gets on the lead lap and then fights his way through during stage 3. And luckily, he had his teammate there too, and it looked like we were setting up for a really pretty awesome duel there, Bob. But then, like you said, caution breeds caution. The first caution comes out, and we could talk about the split now, Bob, because they come to the split 1 and 2, RCR. Obviously, Kyle Busch takes the high side, and Austin Dillon goes low. Did that move shock you, or what did you think? What was your knee-jerk reaction to seeing that move?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think the broadcast was shocked. I was kind of shocked. I see what they tried to do there, where you have Austin Dillon kind of lay back just a little bit on the restart. Kyle Busch gets the push, and then he slides down, gets in front. They link up together. But it just felt a little strange there, where I figured they just kind of would link up together and just kind of say, we're going to do this together. We're going to take the push. At the end, it didn't really matter because they got shuffled back, and you had another caution there. But it was an interesting move there, something that. Thought maybe you're kind of overthinking this. I don't know. What did you think, Ad?
It's just interesting, especially hearing Kyle Busch's thoughts about it after the race. He just said, just thought it would be a good opportunity to kind of start up high, get in front of the teammate, and then get hooked up that way. So that way to hopefully kind of kill the momentum of that outside lane a little bit. But, as Kyle Busch said, it just never really got going. The 24 who was behind the 3 car, they never really kind of connected and got separated from Kyle Busch. And then Kyle Busch got on the brakes and Austin Dillon checked up. And it was just, like you said, kind of fell back from there. And it was kind of a mess. But, it was interesting that because of the longer kind of green flag restart zone there this year at Daytona, it was interesting to see it was a lot easier for that move to have been pulled off, or for that to have been considered a good option, because they definitely had a lot more runway to get it done. I think with the shorter green flag area that they had in this race last year, that maneuver is not even an option. I think you just have to kind of go and get it behind them. But just an interesting little wrinkle that the Chews added to this race, Bob. Ultimately, like you said, shoulda, coulda, woulda. But just because we had a pretty good show written for this. If RFK and RCR would have held on there, Bob, we had a pretty good article written. But scrap it because Ricky Stenhouse decided that we needed a new show. We need a new show planned, Bob.
It was a nice little 2-man tag match. They always promo SmackDown with the Fox NASCAR package. They had a great tag team match up there with Kyle Busch and Austin Dillon, and Keselowski and Busch are a strange pairing with both nonetheless, but strangely works. They were, it was a great match up there, and I don't know, it just felt like RCR was kind of overthinking that, but look at this kind of race here. Even with that, Keselowski finished, I believe, 22nd, didn't end up even getting to the line there. Buescher did get 4th, so he got at least a result for RFK there.
Yeah.
But I mean, God, you look at RCR. It was a tough day. It ended up being a tough day. I mean, it was all right there for them. It was all right there.
Exactly what I was going to say, Bob, is that it's all within their grasp. And if you were watching the race, you know that RCR had a hell of a day. I mean, they were really knocking on the door there at the end. And then, the cautions come out and cars start beating bang and everything happens there at the end. But, I mean, just a very, just one of those things, Bob. I didn't see this finish coming at all. I obviously, you kind of expect it to be a kind of like the end of an NBA game. Anytime you go to Daytona, you kind of expect to have one or two of the the green, white checkered finishes. But Bob, this one felt I don't know. It just feels incomplete. I don't know about you, man, but this race just feels massively incomplete to me. It felt like there was too good of racing all day to then kind of have that, NASCAR hit the button and then kind of look at the photograph from every conceivable angle to determine who won the race. And of course, like you said, is it the most practical way to finish the race? Yeah, probably. It probably is. But right now, it sure doesn't feel like it's complete. And the Daytona 500, it kind of feels like the Super Bowl if it were to end in a tie, Bob. It doesn't feel maybe that it feels pretty, it just feels weird. It feels like kind of like a gimmicky little finish there. And I don't love it.
I get it. I get it. I mean, you get to freeze the field there just to be safe, and you get guys like Riley Herbst in the top 10, though, Ad. You get Travis Pastrana 11th there. Friend of the podcast, Cody Ware, finishing 14th, Ad. You don't get that if you race back to the line, probably. I'm sure wrecked car's still going to pick it up off the tow truck and probably get around Cody Ware. So listen, the fact they froze the field, that gets the 51 and 14th. I'm okay with it.
Look, man, I'm not going to lie to you. I thought the only thing that Riley Herbst and Cody Ware were going to be racing for today was to see who was going to end up self-spinning first. And don't worry, it was Riley Herbst. But, I mean, Riley Herbst ultimately ended up in the top 10. So, who'd have thought?
And also, Ryan Blaney finished 8th. I'm looking at the results here. Ryan Blaney, again, was 8th. The guy that completely caved in his friend in the Stage 2 wreck, and, we'll talk about that wreck here in a little bit, but Ryan Blaney was running around with a wrecked car. You thought, he's going to go to the garage any lap here. That car's going to just give up. And somehow you look back and Ryan Blaney's finishing the top 10. I mean, it's just very chaotic there. Very, very chaotic here, Ad.
I don't know who the primary sponsor is on Ryan Blaney's car right now off the top of my head, but what I will tell you is that Duct Tape probably owes Ryan Blaney a little bit of money for some advertising, because the way that they were able to almost completely rebuild that front fender with duct tape, and then, I mean, for him to somehow be able to put a tire back on that wheel that, that he kind of cut that tire and had to end up coming back to pit road on the rim, just to be able to even get to a point to where he could finish the race, let alone finish it in the top 10. Just one of those gritty performances that you're kind of used to out of this Blaney team. Seems like the win is coming for them, Bob, but I don't know. It just another, just one of those things. Fate just didn't seem to be on his side. I don't know, Bob. There was a lot of guys today that kind of, you were wondering, there was a lot of signs pointing in directions, everybody. If I had to hear the number 19 and Martin Truex associated, I mean, all the things that they were talking about, Martin Truex is 19th, I was ready to kind of 19 myself. I'm not sure, but at that point, Bob, I hate that Ricky Stenhouse won this race. And I can't hide it because it's too fresh in my emotions. I fucking hate that he won this race. I'm sorry.
Well, welcome to plate racing. It's a lottery. I will say, Ad, just to kind of recap this race here, AJ Allmendinger finished 6th. I wanted to kind of mention that real quick because in the first stage there was a moment where AJ Allmendinger about wrecked the damn field. He was one of the 2-lap cars, and they were kind of running up on him, and he jumped in front of the bottom lane, and Clint Boyer at first goes, whoa, what's going on here? But hang on, that made sense, America, and he kind of explained it, but it kind of got glossed over here. And this is a moment that ended up keeping him in the race. It got him 6th. He jumped in front of the line because Bubba Wallace was the lucky dog where, if a caution comes out or the stage ends, the first car lap down gets to go back on the lead lap for those that don't understand that rule. And Bubba Wallace was in the middle of the field kind of running around, and as soon as he gets to the end of the stage, he's back in the game. Well, AJ Allmendinger sees that, and as soon as the pack catches up to him, he jumps right in front of the line and says, you know what, I got 5 or 6 laps to hold on here. I'm going to hold on and just basically be a little leech and suck myself onto the rest of the pack here. And damn it, Ad, that's a dinger move. That's a vintage dinger move, and I can't wait to see that full time this year. I am so pumped.
I mean, was I surprised to see it? Absolutely. I thought that old Kevin LePage was going to have to pass the torch, and we were going to get to rename LePaging the field. We get to call it Dingering the field, but not today, sir.
Deep cut.
That's a deep cut right there, Bob. But I mean, at this point, that's what I thought we were headed towards when I saw everything developing. I kind of felt like old JR watched the WWE. Watch out, watch out, watch out. I mean, it just I didn't know I didn't know what to expect there, Bob. Glad everybody ended up okay, but once it was explained to me, it was a really heads up play. It's why you want a guy like AJ Allmendinger behind the wheel, and whoever the spotter is there, not necessarily sure who, but all credit to them for kind of being able to communicate, understand where they're at in the race, the position they need to be in. And ultimately, it gave him a chance there at the end to kind of be relevant. And that's what they need to do. So it's just little details like that, especially when you're racing like with colleague there, team that you're really trying to build. I mean, it's just got all sorts of good things coming from this race, Bob. Up and down. I mean, big teams, small teams. There's all sorts of things to talk about. So where are we headed next, Bob?
Yeah, that was the main thing I wanted to touch in stage 1, just because they were kind of running around. They were, single file line for the most part. They were being good. Stage 2, there was, one kind of little bobble there. You had a couple of cars get taken out there, Ad. I'm going to just run down the list here. Eric Jones, Tyler Reddick, Chase Elliott, I believe, were all taken out of this one. I believe Kyle Larson, Brad Keselowski all got involved, Noah Gragson. But those were the 3 or 4 that were fully taken out there.
So essentially, Bob, if you are somebody who garners any sort of support from Bob Perry, you were involved in the first wreck in stage 2, is what you're telling me.
Basically, to take out Chase Elliott in the Daytona 500, yes. All we were missing was Christopher Bell getting sideswiped by Chase Elliott's car. Otherwise, yeah, pretty much. I mean, yeah, the allegiance was took a hit there in stage 2, but we keep on pressing on here at the podcast.
Yeah, the allegiance of Bob. Really, it was their darkest hour, but with their backs against the wall, things tended to turn around. I mean, they other than obviously, I think the big shocker for me today, Bob, is Chase Elliott's woes continue. That's kind of just something that, one of the things that sticks out at me. We don't have to talk about it a whole ton, but just interesting to see the nine team not necessarily be on track. A guy who was there at the end, Bob, that shouldn't surprise us, but also is just good to see because never really knew how this next gen experiment was going to go for him, but ended up putting in a hell of a showing, and that's Jimmie Johnson. For the first showing of the 84 car here, Bob. I mean, it just seemed like it was like, a fish in water at that point. I mean, it just seemed like it was just Jimmie back on the track, back in the top 10 towards the end of the Daytona 500. It just felt good to see, and he really performed well today, Bob.
Yeah, he gets caught up in that first overtime wreck, kind of just a casualty of the race there. But no, there was most of the time in that stage 3 where he was in the top 15 and the top 10, just kind of hovering around. You thought, oh man, what if? Just, what if? This is a guy that no matter what he's in, if he's in a stock car, no matter if it's the first generation stock car, that the Hudson Hornet, or if it's this brand new next gen car, if it's the car tomorrow, it doesn't matter. Jimmie Johnson can wheel that thing, especially at Daytona. In any sort of oval, that man is nails. So, for him not being in a car for 2 years, last time I saw him at Daytona was that spring race in 2021 where he was getting eliminated from the regular season in his last year. It was kind of a whimper. He was banged up, beat up car at the end of the race there. And it was just nice to see him competitive there. He's going to run a couple more races there with Legacy. It's great for the sport to have someone like Jimmie Johnson around, both on the track and off as an ambassador there. So, 31st place finish today, not indicative of his actual running today. And I'm encouraged to see that team moving forward, especially, with him at the helm.
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, not a ton of shifting around Daytona, stuff like that. So the street course will be an interesting one. just to see how he'll do when he's got to shift this car a lot more. I know that's been a lot of the complaints from some of the older drivers were just how different they are to kind of have to shift and things like that. So don't have to worry about that with the super speedway racing a whole lot, Bob. But I mean, it was just good on all accounts. Honestly, I think both of the big names that NASCAR brought in as kind of their, not the publicity, the kind of for publicity a little bit. I mean, Travis Pastrana, I just think it was so cool to see him before the race talking, in the interviews and with his daughters and things like that. I thought it was a very cool thing. I like when NASCAR kind of cross markets like this. I think it's really cool to see, guys bringing their audience to the sport, and especially a guy like Travis Pastrana. But Bob, this brings me to a little bit of a topic that we can talk about because does MGM sponsor a race team by chance?
Ad, they are the main sponsor of the RCR team, whether it's the 8 or the 3. And I do have a bone to pick. I'm glad you brought it up here. This is just a small little tangent that I have to mention here. As a man that likes to throw a little money around, recreational gambling, I guess you could call it. I like to throw some money in NASCAR.
Responsibly and legally,
yes.
By the way, we may add.
1-800-GAMBLER if you need help. Please give it a call. We are not here to bankrupt you here at Breaking Balls. But, MGM puts all this money into NASCAR with the sponsorship. And you go on their app and there's, a couple of different bets you can do. But it's not very, large. And then I go and, this is no way an endorsement here, but I looked at the Barstool app this weekend. I finally downloaded that because they had a lot of different options to bet on there. And it's just one of those things where you look at the MGM app and, they have the Daytona 500 on their front page. They could offer so many creative different ways to get the, person that maybe doesn't watch this race. Like Barstool had bets where you could bet on lap leaders. MGM doesn't offer that. Things like that are ways to get the casual fan to have an investment where every lap matters. And in a race like the Daytona 500, it's the Super Bowl. You can bet on the color of Gatorade in the Super Bowl, what Rihanna's first song is going to be. Daytona 500 needs to be a similar way where you can bet on things like that. For MGM, it's a missed opportunity with them, activating their sponsorship in the sport.
At this point, Bob, it just feels like such a missed opportunity because I just don't understand. You're going to spend all the money to sponsor a race team. And you're going to spend, I don't know what those deals are worth exactly, but I'm going to guess upwards of a couple $100,000. So you're spending that much money to really sponsor a race team. And as much as they're on the car, probably upwards of $1 million. So you've got a team. You could even look across the garage. Look at what Noah Gregson's doing with Wendy's. He was out this entire weekend handing out little tags to give people free Frosties. He was handing them out to the media in order to make sure that they would tweet about it. He talked about it when they went to the in-car interview. He was talking about Wendy's. I mean, Noah Gragson is doing just about everything you can to activate sponsorship and to create value within that relationship. And I think what I would like to see from MGM's perspective is that it's a relationship of if you're going to be in the sport, not just with your finances and supporting the race team and making sure you've got your logo on the car. Let's support it 100%. Let's get creative prop bets. Let's make things unique. You get all sorts of, like you said, you get all sorts of interesting prop bets for the Super Bowl, but of course that's because the NFL is one of the 4 major sports. Is MGM the right betting partner right now for NASCAR? I'm not sure. Would it benefit NASCAR to maybe kind of do an exclusive gambling partnership with kind of a smaller company? Maybe someone like a Barstool who would give them kind of personalized attention and personalized props and things to bring people into the sport. Because let's face facts. If you're creative enough with your prop bets and you're creative enough with what you're staking, it just makes it such that you'll bring new eyes into the sport. So I think as gambling continues to grow, especially within the sport of NASCAR, it'll be interesting to see if they just try and partner themselves with the biggest name possible, or if NASCAR itself is going to search for a little bit of value here. Because MGM certainly has shown that they don't value NASCAR nearly as much as NASCAR values MGM. I'll say that at least.
Yeah, and you mentioned the no Gregson thing. It's a huge thing where it goes a long way to see the sponsor invested in the sport, not just throwing their logo on it and saying it's a day. That goes a long way, having them at the track, a presence like that. And we might as well get into it just because that's part on the track. Off the track, the Fox broadcast, we can talk about that. The biggest thing that came away from me was the green flag and even non-green flag racing was under caution or was under commercial. I mean, good God Almighty! I understand we have to pay the bills here. In a day of streaming and a day of side-by-side racing, every time there was action or a lead change, it was because we were under commercial. And I don't know if that's just the racing gods manifesting good racing while it's under commercial. But you mentioned the corporate sponsorships and Wendy's and all these different entities. NASCAR's got to find a way to be creative without losing their fans that are watching each week. Because as a fan, if I'm bringing friends over to watch the race and they're only watching half the race while the rest of it's commercials, you watch the Super Bowl because of the game and the commercials. Well, NASCAR doesn't have that same likelihood, that luxury. They're just throwing in commercials because it's the sport. And there's got to be a better way. I don't know if that's the new TV contract, if that's something we have to look at. But Ad, just was curious of your thoughts, just on your perspective on that.
Bob, NASCAR just seems to be in such a unique perspective because it has, on one hand, a very dedicated, knowledgeable, and understanding fan base that has been with the sport for upwards of, 20, 30 years at this point and have been following it for who knows how long through its heyday and deeply understand what's going on and get very deeply frustrated by the way that, the races are presented sometimes. And then you have the casual fan who I think now is more so who some of these TV broadcasts are marketing themselves towards, and rightfully so, because they have to be kind of have that mass appeal. So you can very clearly tell that somebody on the television production side who is not interested in racing is deciding when we are cutting away from these races. And it's not that person's fault because they were given a job that they just aren't equipped for, but they clearly need to put somebody who understands what the important part of the race, what important part of races are and stuff like that. I mean, they went to commercial this time, Bob, with I think they were 7 laps in when we got the first commercial this go around. I mean, we're just getting
it was 10 laps in. It was 10 laps in, and then 19 laps in, and then 28 laps. It was every 9 or 10 laps at. It was just you can't get a flow as a viewer of the race in that.
Well, and that's the thing is that you at least kind of have an understanding of where the cars are, so that way, as you're watching what's in front of you, you are at least seeing the images a few seconds ago of okay, well, there's the 20 through 30 cars and stuff like that. You at least kind of get into a flow of watching the race and understanding where the cars are. But when you're going to commercial every 9 laps or something like that, it just breaks it up for the viewer in a way that almost makes it why the hell am I even watching this live? I may as well just record this, watch it on a little bit of a delay, and stay off of Twitter.
Well, yeah, it's really tough because, I'm watching there and, my mom is a huge motorsports fan. She's watching the race and it goes to the first commercial. And you've got Kyle Larson and Alex Bowman leading the race. And then it comes back and you're at lap 14 and it takes 3 or 4 laps to even explain what happens. But Christopher Bell's leading the race and, Kyle Larson's Alex Bowman are, a couple places back. And you're like, whoa, what just happened here? Christopher Bell was 4th a minute ago. As a viewer, you need to be explained what's going on because otherwise, someone like me who's, younger, I can go and watch the international feed bootleg it online and have continuous non-commentary, but I can see what's going on at least.
Yeah, it just feels like it's one of those things where if I get up in the middle of the broadcast to go to the bathroom and I miss a lead change or I miss a caution, that's on me. But don't take away the option of me to miss that by going to the bathroom or something like that by not even showing it to me with sound or anything like that. I mean, let's face facts. The first wreck of the year we saw just no sound, nothing to guide us through it, just literally just watching cars crash on a side-by-side. I mean, it just doesn't do anybody any good.
It's literally like the meme that's been going around the offseason where the big Daytona wreck happened last year against the Whopper. And it was literally that coming into fruition.
Yeah, no, that was 100% it. They made it happen on week 1 of this season. It may not have been the Whopper commercial, but whatever commercial it was, they basically made that meme happen, which I mean,
I think it was the Limu Emu one, which is even better.
Emu.
And Doug.
And Doug. I mean, I don't know, Bob. There was just it just felt like one of those things. They do. There are some things that the broadcast I think does very well for the casual fan, like. And I think, one of the bright spots today was, like you said, Clint Boyer pointing out why A.J. Allmendinger was doing what he was doing. I thought that was
Clint was good today. Clint was actually okay today.
No, Clint did a good
job. The broadcast team was actually not bad.
No, they did a good job. I think they did a pretty decent job of matching up the emotion. Towards the end of the race there, I think it just kind of got confusing for everybody. So there was a little bit of kind of jumble.
Everyone was drained at that point.
Well, I mean, myself included. I mean, shoot, it was one of the longer races. Probably, I think it was the longest Daytona 500 of all time. I mean, it's just one of these things, Bob. I mean, the fact that Ricky Stenhouse couldn't even do burnouts because he was out of gas, I mean, that just goes to show you where we were at with this race. I mean, just...
Bob, we can pile on Fox as much as we want here. I think there was some good. There was obviously some bad. I think the commercials really leave a bad taste in your mouth. But overall, I think the racing itself was pretty darn good this weekend, especially Sunday. Was there anything that we missed that we really need to touch on Sunday before we kind of get into the appetizers of the weekend?
No, I just think, like you said, just a really good weekend of racing, Bob. Especially in the Cup race this year. Just kind of thinking back to last year's Cup race here at Daytona, still a lot of a feeling out process. Kind of the first time that they had to drive these next gen cars at really a high rate of speed. And they definitely seemed more comfortable today. Definitely felt more stable in the draft. I'm not sure how much of that was because what they have learned last year, or did the different front ends have anything to do with it, Bob? But I mean, there was just it just seemed like one of those things. There was good racing all day, different leaders, everybody was changing around. The green flag pitch strategy mattered, which I think is a very underrated aspect of modern racing, especially with stage racing. There's so much of, we were able to have some really meaningful green flag pit stops, which I think makes a race just so much more interesting, has a chance to really turn things on its head. And yeah, I don't know, Bob. I think before we really move on from the Cup race, we got to talk about it, because if this continues like it did today, we're going to be in for a pretty interesting season, Bob. But the Fords, man, there was some Ford domination all day today, Bob. I mean, there was a time where I think the entire top five for a better part of one of the stages was all Fords. I mean, just remarkable the speed they had today.
Yeah, you looked at the Fords, and they were definitely the class of the field as far as speed. A lot of times the last few years at these plate races, they do have the strength in numbers, so they are kind of the team to beat. But yeah, they definitely looked like they had an edge this year, especially guys like Ryan Preece were really strong. Chase Briscoe, obviously Kevin Harvick, Keselowski, the RFK cars, we mentioned it already, they were rockets today. But they just, for whatever reason, they, that wreck with Briscoe and Preece kind of really stacked things up when the field got shuffled in that third stage pit cycle. So the Fords weren't at full strength there to take on Stenhouse and Larson at the end there. It was just Logano. And, Keselowski, Buescher got kind of pushed back with that, Kyle Busch wreck with Austin Dillon. So it kind of shuffled out weird, but Ford was definitely the class of the field today, Ad. And, we might as well get into it, because I think this is a great segue here. We talked about Ford kind of bungling the strategy here. But I don't know if you saw Saturday night in the Xfinity race. And if you want to write a textbook essay about bungling a strategy, you can look at Dale Jr. and his Junior Motorsports team, because they were going to the line with, one to go. Austin Hill, the RCR 21, is the rocket of the day. He's leading the field, but right behind him are four junior cars. You've got Josh Berry, Justin Allgaier, Sam Mayer, and I'm forgetting Brandon Jones. I'm still not used to that. It's still strange. The Menards car on the 9 is just weird to me. It's so weird.
This was literally the one thing that happened in the Xfinity offseason that you needed to keep track of. But continue. Go ahead.
It was strange. It was strange. But you look at that, and caution comes out late, and you've got, okay, well, Austin Hill's, that's not what he wanted to see. He's surrounded by four cars. Well, nope. Josh Berry runs out of gas right before you come to the one to go. Well, there's one of your cars done. And then as you're coming to the line to take the white flag, you got three more to take you on. Well, no, you don't, because Josh Berry's already gone. You got Justin Allgaier, Brandon Jones. Brandon Jones gets shuffled back, and then Allgaier and Mayer take each other out. They go instead of racing each other, they race each other instead of Austin Hill. And Sam Mayer ends up upside down. Justin Allgaier ends up third. And, Austin Hill ends up the fastest car wins. But, man, Dale Jr.'s got to be pissed at his team this weekend, right?
Yeah, you certainly would think if you're pursuing somebody like the LAPD did O.J. Simpson, that you would eventually, much like O.J. Simpson, would get caught up to there. But for whatever reason, man, just one thing after another, those cars kept falling off. And all credit to Austin Hill. I mean, a heartbreaker in the qualifier for the Daytona 500, probably should have been racing today. But anyway, I digress. Still makes the most of his weekend, gets his first win of the season, back to back. I mean, like he never left. Just one of those things that just seems like he's really kind of found his knack with that Xfinity car driving at these super speedway type tracks. So all credit to Austin Hill. I think, is this a situation where Austin Hill won a race as opposed to the Junior Motorsports guys losing a race? I'm not sure, but we'll see.
I think it's a little bit of both there, Ad. I think it's a case where I think both can really be true here, because obviously the strength in numbers at a plate track, the Junior Motorsports cars had every opportunity to win that race. But Austin Hill, if you watch that race, he rocketed to the field. He was on pole, has some radio issues right before the race goes green, has to go to the back of the field. Within 10 laps is already back up leading the race, wins the first stage, was clearly the fastest car there out there today. So, like you touched on, he is a monster on these super speedways. He's turning into a very, very good plate track racer. And a little bit of karma after, he was already in the 500 and then has that wreck, and Connor Daly comes in, which I believe Connor Daly, what did he finish? I believe he was 8 or 9 laps down. So we were pretty close on our estimate there.
We got there.
But Austin Hill with that karma there. We were close. We were very close if we didn't hit it there. I need to double check. This is unofficial, of course, but we were very close on that Connor Daly number. But yeah, Austin Hill, way to salvage a weekend there. And I got to mention this. Sam Mayer, we are 1 for 1 on the podcast this year of drivers interacting with us on social media and then flipping their car over. Sam Mayer gave us a like on Twitter. And, for any other driver, Truck Series, Xfinity, Cup Series, if you want to go on the roof next week, or if you're feeling like you want to be a little Travis Pastrana Daredevil, go ahead and throw a like on the Breaking Balls social media. It doesn't have to be on Twitter, could be on Instagram, could be on YouTube, but let's just say we got some mojo going. Sam Mayer, thank you. If you want to go on your roof next week, you know where to find us.
Yep, we'll make it easy for you. We'll go ahead and cut this. Maybe I'll put a clip of you on the roof here, Sam, just so you can relive it if you're watching this. Hi, how are you? We'll break the fourth wall a little bit. And now we're going to continue with the rest of the podcast because, Bob, it really was I think this race reminded me how much I love watching the Xfinity cars. I think, obviously, my excitement for Cup is always there just because, anytime you're going Cup racing, it's the Daytona 500, the build-up, you see so many celebrities at the race. There's all sorts of things to get you excited. But then it's also Xfinity because you don't get them at the Clash and you almost forget that the season's starting. And then all of a sudden it shows up and you've got the race on Saturday. And it was very, like I said, I forgot how much I enjoyed it, Bob.
And no matter how good the racing is at, you get peak Xfinity still at the end where, it takes about 10 or 15 minutes to decide a winner. You've got all 3 cars literally stuck at the finish line, just sitting there, window nets down, just kind of waiting, I think I won. Well, let's just wait and see where they froze the field. It's a great sight just to see that. We're so back. We're so back.
Yeah, I don't know, Bob. Maybe at this point, do we just have somebody put a random freeze in this podcast, and whenever it freezes, whoever was speaking last is the 100% owner? Or how do we do this? Because at this point, I think we should bring the NASCAR freeze rule into this podcast somehow. I just haven't quite worked out how.
We can find a way to do it for sure. I'd rather a freeze rule than a rain rule because we might as well just touch on the Friday night race a little bit. There wasn't much going on there. I'll be honest with you, Ad. I'll hand up. I did not catch it. I was out on the town in Nashville. living up life. You only live once, Ad, and the Truck Series. If I'm gonna miss a race this weekend, I'm sorry. It's gonna be the Truck race. I'm sorry.
Hand up, Bob. I put in a valiant effort at watching the truck race. I really did. And I was into the truck race for all of like 2 hours. But once you started kind of really going into the night there, into the late afternoon, I got to study because your boy's taking the bar on Tuesday. So yeah, I tried to watch it till the end there, but with all the rain and weather and everything that kept happening, were we going to race? Were we not going to race? Whatever. I mean, congratulations.
It was grueling. It was Daytona. It was so typical. The off and on rain showers. You hate it just because as a kickoff to the season with the trucks, there's a lot of great storylines there. So it's tough to see the rain end the race there. But Zane Smith, back-to-back Daytona wins there. Definitely going to be one of the guys to beat in the Truck Series, I think, this year. Ad moving forward. Obviously, he won it last year in that 38 truck. Going to get some Cup starts this year. So I mean, he's definitely, I think, the hottest non-Cup prospect out there right now. No reason to think that this is not the first of many truck wins this year. I don't see him having an off season for sure in that 38 truck. But just kind of wanted to touch on that just because we are talking racing and everyone gets some love. And I got to mention it, Ad. It's damn good to see the Truck Series sponsored by Craftsman. It feels like it's back in the old days again.
Yeah, welcome back home a little bit. It just feels nice. It reminds you of the cool commercials that they used to do back in the day. For whatever reason, the Craftsman Truck Series commercials were always the hardest bits of television. In the mid 2000s, they didn't have to go that hard, but they just did for whatever reason.
I hit puberty a year early because of those commercials.
No, they did. I agree. For whatever reason, now it's just Frank Thomas and Doug Flutie trying to sell Nugenics. I think if they were to just put a little bit more of the Craftsman Speed Weeks commercials or Craftsman Series commercials on TV, we may be healthier as a country of men. But I digress, Bob. Before this takes a very weird turn, you got anything else you want to talk about here before we wrap things up?
No, I'm glad that Frank Thomas has not shown up in my household. I'm not a married man, but I wouldn't feel good about my my situation if that happens. It's great to be talking regular season racing. We got the Clash in our lives a couple weeks ago, and we've been talking silly season for months now. It's gonna be a nonstop affair here. The circus of NASCAR is off and rolling. We're at Fontana next week. We'll be breaking down that on Thursday, of course. But we're back. We're so back. I can't wait. We got one playoff spot allegedly down and 15 more to go.
Yes, Bob, we are so back, baby. NASCAR coming back out west. The next time we speak, Bob, I will have completed the bar.
Past the bar.
I will have passed the bar. We're gonna say it with confidence now. I have passed the bar. The next time you heard me or hear of me. So, yeah, man, we're moving on. We've got big things coming, Bob. Stick with us all season here because we're gonna be here, on Thursdays usually before the race, and obviously the Sundays for the reactions after the race, stuff like that. If you've subscribed to us on YouTube, thank you so much for the support. Like, comment, subscribe. Be a friend, tell a friend. We appreciate the hell out of it. So, Bob, as usual, I'll let you finish it. Last word, pal.
Ricky Stenhouse.
I hate it.